in the media, because the media is often accused of being part of this perception management. But look at the numbers. Pay extra for made in India goods is a question we ask. Yes, say 67%. No, say 30%. When you look at all these numbers, Rahul, they clearly show that economic nationalism does work. At the end of the day, if you speak in this language of let's boycott Chinese goods, let's buy Indian goods, that seems to be at the moment the kind of questions where people will back you, completely. India's military capabilities versus China.
This is a very interesting question because, and as General Ved Malik and any scholar of military affairs will tell you, there is massive asymmetry when it comes to military capabilities between the Indian and the Chinese armies. We are capable of a good defense. Are we capable of knocking the Chinese out? That's debatable. But when this question was put to the Indian people in this Karvy poll, 72% of the respondents said India can defeat China. 9% said India cannot defeat China. 10% said it will end in a stalemate. General Ved Malik, what do you make of the fact that 7 out of 10 it's the faith they have in the Indian army, the men on the ground, the young soldier, the young officer, and the leadership, political and military, where people feel that 72% of the respondents thought that India can beat China, General Malik?
No, there is no doubt that people in India have a lot of faith in their armed forces, and that is how it should be. I mentioned 2 negative points earlier, minus points, but the fact is that once we got to know about this inclusion, the response both militarily as well as politically was very good and very correct. The fact is that we were able to pump in our forces quite quickly, and we were able to induct even a whole division in that area to strengthen our positions all along the Eastern Ladakh. And the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, they both did rather well in going to the forward troops and raising their morale and, sending the warning to China.
Therefore, in a way,
that was a good work done. And one second, that was a very good work done. And people have a lot of faith in the armed forces. But to say that we can defeat China, I think that probably is an exaggeration, because we can defend ourselves, but to defeat China is something quite different to that.
I come back to the issue of, therefore, issues which involve this element of what nationalism, hyper-nationalism, call it what you will. Raj Chengappa, the sense one gets is on this issue, Prime Minister Modi is on familiar territory. These are the kind of issues which he is able to convince, it appears, a large number of Indians that, look, I have your best interest still in mind. So unless you suffer a military debacle or a defeat, it will not be seen as necessarily in the red column.
Rajdeep, let's not forget that Mr. Modi's track record in terms of hitting back has been good. We've seen it after Uri, the Uri attack, and we've seen it after Pulwama, the Balakot attack happened. So he does have a track record in terms of hitting back at adversaries that turn hostile.
Right.
The other point that comes through is the way he's handled the crisis. You see, there's military means, which he has then, as General Malik rightly put, gave a good response over there. But he's also used 2 tools. One is using business to put pressure. You win a war not just through using your weapons, but you also win a war by psychologically impacting them and also economically impacting them. So
but how much of a difference is it making?
Clear signal that
a lot of this seems to be managing the environment psychologically more than real. He's not damaging the Chinese economy.
No, it is then, as I mentioned earlier, it has turned, Rajdeep, it has turned viral in some senses. You see, TikTok is now to be banned by the US as well. Everybody else is looking at China with a different eye in terms of doing business with it. So you have put some business pressure on it. At the same time, I think, internationally also, China is getting diverted.
Right.
America sent its warships across that side. So you are putting international pressure. But I think the main thing that one can see in terms of the handling is, look, we are not wanting to go to war with China.
No, but that's the question that we asked.
Yes, go ahead,
Rajdeep.
Go ahead.
And this is one of the very startling responses, and I want everyone to look very carefully at the next question coming on your screen. The question was, should India go to war with China? 59% of the respondents are saying yes, 34% are saying no. Now, ordinarily, no one should seek war, and war is bloody, it's brutal, it's expensive. But General Ved Malik, 6 out of 10 respondents saying, Dekhi jaogi, let there be war. It shows that the Indian people are raring to have a go at the Chinese army. That if you mess with us, the people are strongly behind the Indian government, strongly behind the Indian army, and they want to have war a go if it comes to that.
Basically, that is because people don't understand what a war is, and they don't understand where the conflict at the moment is taking place. None of them, hardly any one of them have been to this area of Ladakh. They don't know what kind of deployments are there. So there is a lot of ignorance when they make a statement of this nature. And but the fact is that in this area, with the kind of intrusion that has taken place, these are small intrusions. Indeed, there are intrusions. But to go to war is a very major step that would be taken. And
right,
that
but that's
affect
again,
the whole nation.
Again, General Saab, this is a mood of the nation, so we're only looking at mood. The other question we asked, can India trust China? Yes said 9%, and 84% said no. So clearly there's a lot of mistrust of China, there's anger against China, and it appears the Prime Minister has cleverly been able to tap into all of that. I come back to it, Supriya Srinath. Is this the issue which you should be going at in the government in the manner that, let's say, Rahul Gandhi has gone at the government on China, knowing that it is a sensitive issue? Could you possibly have raised it? But as some opposition leaders other opposition leaders have pointed out, this is not the issue on which we want to confront the government.
No, I think trust with China is very important, and especially because Mr. Modi has mishandled the situation. He's constantly spoken about his bond and his chemistry with Xi Jinping. We've seen what happened at Sabarmati and at Mahabalipuram. This despite Doklam, and this despite now Leh and Ladakh and, you know, the transgressions that are happening. So I think our reading of China was completely wrong. And if you ask me, the foreign policy is to be blamed here, which has become extremely Mr. Modi-centric. It is all about photo ops. It is not about the career diplomacy that people have put into relationship with China or any other
Respond to that,
country.
GVL.
And let us
GVL, respond to that. At some level, the foreign policy of Mr. Modi will come under questioning for the personalization. He may well claim that, you know, he may well be getting public support on China at the moment, but diplomats and strategic analysts will tell you that there are elements of his foreign policy that are now coming under serious question.
This is a very dubious explanation or a dubious kind of reasoning. The people of India don't buy this at all. And the leaders of the world don't believe this at all. What they see, the way they look at it is different. They see Prime Minister Modi ji made an effort to have best of relations with each of the neighbors in the region. And he went out of the way to have best of relations with Pakistan earlier. And when Pakistan did not respond, and they responded with stealth, he taught them a lesson. He also wanted to have best of relations with China. And when China betrays, he's giving them a dose of the same kind of, he's giving them a bitter dose.
Broadly,
So people look at Prime Minister as somebody who has made a good effort, but when they do not reciprocate, he teaches them a lesson for their lives.
You know, how
and today
voters seem to be perceiving it in this poll, Rajdeep, is very clear. The Prime Minister sent this message that, did you want me to be friends with China or not? Did you want friendship with the Chinese people? Yes. We gave that a shot. It's the Chinese who betrayed it. So instead of this being looked at as a tactical, strategic, military intelligence failure or a failure response and imagination, it's now Xi Jinping, the Chinese people, the CCP, the Chinese government betraying the Indian people and the Indian government.
Also, Rahul, it shows the wide distinction and gap that exists between us sitting in studios talking to strategic affairs experts and diplomats who will perhaps look at diplomacy, foreign policy more carefully versus someone out on the ground. The person on the ground at the end of the day say, "नहीं, Modi ji में विश्वास है, ये चीनी जो है, ये ऐसे ही गद्दार है, ये बदमाशी कर." So you see, I think we need to recognize that, and I think maybe that's where I can bring in Debashish Chatterjee of Karvy. This is corrected for our viewers, a perceptional survey. Am I correct? It's not necessarily, an endorsement of the Prime Minister's strategy as much as a perception that the Prime Minister is doing it right. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This is completely a perceptional survey, and our questions have been very, very perceptional. Like, can India trust China without naming any particular personality over here? So it's more of a country believing the other country, and the options were there.
So, I think it comes back to perception management. The Prime Minister is astute at perception management. The trip to Ladakh that you mentioned was part of that perception management. He didn't send Rajnath Singh there. He went there himself. There was talk that the Defence Minister would go. It's the Prime Minister who went.
No, but he's also been very calibrated. General
And he's not
Malik,
named China, interestingly, even once.
Instead of what we saw after the terror attacks in Pathankot and Uri, where the Prime Minister was, waxing eloquent, there was poetry flowing, ki sar nahi jhukne dunga, etc. He said the right things, but he hasn't been as all-out aggressive as he was against Pakistan. So there is a calibration in response to the reality that this is an emerging superpower, and therefore we have to be careful about what we say and yet hold firm on the ground. I'm not pulling back. I'm not going to accept defeat. I won't be cowed down. But it's not as if I will go and start creating a fight or picking a fight which I know is tough to win.
Rahul, don't forget what he said after he came to know about those 20 soldiers who died in Galwan River Valley. And he said that we will not let their lives go forgotten. And that is the kind of a message that he has said. And I totally agree with you that since 2013 or 14, the whole, our strategy has definitely become more proactive than it used to be earlier. And we have taken some steps. And I won't be surprised if some step is taken in future also. Of course, such steps are taken only at the right time and at the right place.
But here's the point I want to make, General Malik, and I want to draw you in and Rajdeep on this. Unlike you'd expect from a populist who's very impulsive, Prime Minister Modi, despite his nationalistic urges, has kept his cool. He's come under attack. It's not something he's happy about with what the Chinese have done.
He hasn't mentioned China by name. I think that, he's not said, hum Chiniyon ko sabak sikhayenge. No, if you, in Ladakh, he's been very careful.
Rajdeep, when he goes to Ladakh, and he's talking about what's happening on the other side, he's talking about Vistarwad, he's not talking about Japan or Pakistan.
Yeah, but it's not in the sense of a Trump who will say things.
No, but Trump runs the United States. Look at their economic and military capabilities.
He will not say things that will eventually end up embarrassing his foreign office beyond a point where the space for negotiation completely disappears. At the end of the day, you know that you've got to work with the Chinese through negotiation. You've got to work through military de-escalation and diplomatic negotiation. It's a long and tortuous process. You take two steps forward, and one step back, but you've got to work. So to that extent, I think he's conscious of the fact that I can't just go, saber rattling into a sensitive issue. And perhaps, there is an element of wisdom in that kind of approach. I don't think that's
the point I'm making, and that's the magic of Modi, that he's actually been very cautious in what he said and what he's done, and yet he's pressed the right buttons.
Also an element of embarrassment, Rahul.
No, but he's been able to convince the people. But Rajdeep, militarily, we haven't evicted the Chinese. The Chinese are still sitting where they are. And yet he's been able to convey strength. It's the best of both worlds.
That's because he remains a formidable communicator. I think he's been able to communicate that, look, I'm going to get tough with China when I need to. Give me time.
And it's faith. The people of India believe that Modi ji's got our back covered.
I think they do. At least that's what our survey certainly seems to suggest. And perhaps that's a good point on which to
take a quick break.
Because we've got not just China, but we've got other issues. And these are issues where perhaps the Prime Minister may have even more questions to answer. In particular, what's coming up next? The economy.
India Today gains access to Riya Chakravarti's call records in the last few months. Sushant's girlfriend spoke to the DCP Bandra, who's handling the Sushant Singh Rajput death case. Records reveal she spoke to Sushant 147 times in the last year. These are all only pieces of evidence. They prove nothing at this point of time. Sushant Singh Rajput's family accuses Riya Chakravarti of overdosing the actor in an affidavit filed by the Bihar government in the Supreme Court. Alleges that Riya's sole motive was to take Sushant's money. This is what the family alleges. Patna Superintendent of Police Vinay Tiwari, freed from quarantine in Mumbai, says he wasn't quarantined by the BMC. This as the Bihar government files an affidavit in the Supreme Court accusing the Mumbai police of helping Riya Chakravarti. 13 persons dead in a landslide in Idukki in Kerala's Wayanad district. Red alert sounded in Malappuram. After the Beirut explosion, alarm in Chennai over the storage of 740 tons of the same chemical, ammonium nitrate, at the city's port. Process of clearing out containers to begin in the next 3 days. Could this be a disaster just waiting to happen?
So sorry.
How has PM Modi tackled the twin challenges, Corona and China? India's opinion on India Today. India's most comprehensive and trusted survey. Mood of the Nation. All India Survey. August 7th, 8 p.m. onwards.
For more news and updates, you can log on to our website indiatoday.in or download the India Today app now.
The Newsman brings you a brand new show. The biggest news story of the day. Filtering out the noise. Giving you a full 360-degree picture. News unlocked. Stories beyond the... Ladakh standoff nears 100 days. Indian tanks storm the mountains. Does India have enough tanks? Why the hunt for lighter tanks? The deep dive on Indian armor. This week on Battle Cry.
Welcome back once again to the India Today Mood of the Nation poll brought to you by Karvy Insights. Now let's turn to the other big issue of our times, the economy. Rahul.
We're in the middle of the worst depression India has seen in a long time. Globally, it's the worst depression since the Great Depression of the 1920s. How do people perceive the Modi government's handling of the economic situation? Like was the case with China, on the economy as well, the government comes out with flying colors. 72% of our respondents think the government's either done an outstanding or a good job. 24% said outstanding, 48% said good, Only 21% felt that the performance was average. 6%, just 6% felt the government hadn't handled the economy well. On the question of a comparison between the Modi government's performance and that of the predecessor, the Manmohan Singh government, if I put that comparison out, there again, the government seems to be handling the situation well in the eyes of the Indian voters. 43% of the respondents said the government has been better than the UPA. That's almost half the respondents think non-economist Narendra Modi has done a better job than economist Manmohan Singh on the handling of the economy. 10% think it's been worse than the UPA. 45% say it's just been about the same. So Rajdeep, here as well, a strong favourable response from respondents in this India Today survey, despite the fact that we're dealing with a lot of economic hardship, we're in the middle of a crisis, sector after sector is in the doldrums, the recovery period is uncertain, but people seem to think the economy is as well handled as is possible given the circumstances, right?
You know, I can understand the China numbers to some extent. I find these numbers absolutely bewildering because this actually is an issue that should be hitting and hurting the common man. If 24% call it outstanding and 48% say good, that's a total of 72%. Let's try and make some sense of this. Shamika Ravi is joining us at this moment, economist. Shamika Ravi, make some sense of it. You were part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council till not too long ago. In times where everything seems to be going northwards, the India Today Mood of the Nation says 72% say good or outstanding performance by the Prime Minister in handling the economy.
Well, part of the reason I think is people do perceive this situation to be out of, it's not a making of the government. It is definitely an exogenous shock. The pandemic is not a making of the government. But I think, again, Rajdeep, I'd like to get into the details of who are the voters that you spoke to, because economy means very different things to different people. Now, if you talk to the bottom 2 quintiles, the series of packages that the government has been focusing since March have mostly been catering to that segment. So perhaps, those transfers are reaching the intended people and they are happy about it. If you talk to the top 3 quintiles, then I think the issues are more about livelihood, about revenues, about salaries.
Let me take those issues to Supriya Shrined, because Supriya Shrined, you've tracked the economy for the opposition. In a sense, you become one of the Congress's voice on the issue. As is being suggested, that are you all sort of, when you say the economy is doing badly, yes, it is. That's the objective reality. But it isn't leading to anger against the government or anger against Mr. Modi at least not among the bottom quintile yet. Or anger against Mr. Modi at least not among...
I find it very tough to imagine because the RBI Consumer Confidence Survey, which does a similar sort of a check on consumer confidence, is at multi-year lows. So I don't understand which are these people who are saying that the economy's handling has been outstanding, because truth be told, GDP growth or any number, any statistic is not merely a number. It is a significant symbol of what's happening with employment, what's happening with wages, what is happening with poverty. And on all those counts, this government has fared very badly. In fact, since demonetization, growth rate has halved. And it is not just a number that has halved. Growth rate has halved, which means economic opportunities, which means standard of living, which means wages have halved. And I don't understand how are people saying things are good. So if this is perception management, then perhaps they've done a good job, because the situation on the ground
One second.
is very, very different. And I can say that
on China, you can say whether there's perception management or not. Economy is something which every person feels for himself. Jobs have been lost. Companies are shutting down or badly off, not being able to pay salaries. So this can't be about perception management. This is about how people feel, because if they didn't feel this way, they won't say it. So Devashish at Karvy, try and explain this. The reality is we're negative when it comes to growth. We're amongst the worst hit economies. The longest recovery rate is likely to be in India. And yet somehow voters that you spoke to seem to say that the government's handling the economy really well.
Okay. Rahul, couple of points on this. If you look at our sample of 12,000, 67% were from rural. So this sample is rural heavy. I mean, given India's composition, because we have to do the mood of the nation. second thing is, in further questions, we'll see when it comes to personal loss or personal income, whether there has been an income loss or a job loss, there are people who are very clearly saying that, yes, I have faced this. Here the question was very simple, which was, how will you rate the government on the economic performance or the handling of the economy? When we go back, when we'll move forward and look into other factors which are bigger probably at this point of time, probably what Rajdeep had said earlier, that the pandemic situation has sort of overcasted almost
because
everything.
normally you would believe that when prices are going, you see, I think one of the things is you're still not in double-digit inflation. For all that is gone wrong, you're not in double-digit inflation. That's when the bottom of the pyramid really starts hurting.
No, but he seems to be saying because there's a COVID situation, people are saying, okay, yes, it's because of COVID that the economy is in a mess. GVL Narasimha Rao, you're really having luck roll your way. If the economy was as badly off as it is, and if Manmohan Singh was in government, there would have been street protests day in and day out. Now somehow, because there's a pandemic which is global, people again giving the benefit of the doubt, theek hai, bichara Modi ji kya karenge? There's a global pandemic, which is why all of us together have to take a hit.
No, unfortunately, a lot of you, I must say this, a lot of you and a lot of us, I was a part of the same media fraternity, so was the Congress spokesperson. We try to really discuss among ourselves and believe something to be reality. The Congress has a problem in accepting this survey because it is real. It is based on...
No, job losses are also real. No, GVL Narasimha Rao, job losses are also real.
No, come on, let him speak. It depends, no, you see, depends on what you ask people. You see, the present situation is certainly a very challenging situation. People know this. There is acknowledgement of this in the government. What people are appreciative of is the manner in which this government and Honorable Prime Minister responded to this challenge with the Atmanirbhar package, with a new vision that has been unveiled, with a 1.7 lakh crore, 1.75 lakh crore Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. They know how this government is converting this crisis into adversity. The Prime Minister has gone in a national address, he told the people, these are adverse times and we need to really buckle up.
Let's just test what you're saying. Let's test what you're saying, GVL. Let's test what you're saying. We asked about the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. 53% said it's a timely campaign. 53% said the Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar campaign is timely. Not possible to execute, said 38%. Economic status under Modi government improved, said 48%. Same, said 42%. And 10% said deteriorated. Somewhere, Rajchandappa, in all of these numbers, again, it comes back to the fact that Mr. Modi seems to be in some kind of an extended honeymoon with the Indian people.
Honeymoons don't last for so long.
No, sometimes, what else? Okay, call it a love affair. Chalo, love affair. Honeymoon ho gaya. Abhi love affair. They still seem to be willing to say, look.
Please use the word asta. Please use the word
asta. Okay, we are in Ram Mandir week. We'll use the word asta. Yes. But Rajchandappa respond.
Rajdeep, I think there are several factors to this. And the main thing is that while the Shamika Ravi hit the button when she says that people think that it is a world problem, not just an India problem. In that sense, she's lucky the economy was tanking even before COVID came. But that is then, COVID has overtaken or, overshadowed everything else. And so he gets away. But there is a warning in this. Because if you see, the people do say that they've lost jobs and they have salary cuts. This is a bit what I call a demonetization kind of thing. When demonetization happened and we did the Mood of the Nation poll, everybody said it was a fantastic thing and Mr. Modi's ratings went up considerably. Now, 6 months later, 1 year later, those ratings of demonetization began to go down and, in fact, started figuring much later. And some actually felt it was one of his failures. So what we are saying is that people are saying, fine, we know that the world is in a crisis, the economy is in a crisis, we're willing to bear with you. But there is a warning in that you need to attend to these big things that's happened. We have lost jobs, we have lost our salaries, and now we're going to give you the time. We believe you're the best bet in doing what is to be done.
No, but the most credible answer
but
on
this thing will be only 2 or 3 months.
Possibly seems to be, Shamika Ravi, that if the poll sample is skewed towards rural India, and this is the response we get, the one most intuitive understanding could be that maybe in rural India things aren't as badly off as they are around us in the big cities. And if it were, then the response wouldn't be the way it is. If people are saying, but this is not China, as I said, this is not national security. Here people understand whether they're doing well or not. Do you think that could be potentially one reason why on the economy people are saying that the government's doing well?
Oh, your sampling definitely is determining the overall weight of the answer. Because 60% rural. Remember also the severity of the pandemic itself isn't quite as much in the rural areas relatively. And the second point is, this is pertaining to what just Rajdeep said, that, you know, when inflationary pressures are there, Rajdeep, particularly from the food side, then, you know, on the net, many farmers or the agriculture sector tends to gain. So there is a distribution effect around inflation as well. And it's important to bear that in mind when you look at people's, rating of the government.
You know, that precisely, I think, in a way reflects perhaps once again the gap between economists who will many of whom are now roundly criticizing the government on various issues, including the failure to provide direct cash. On the other hand, people out there may still feel that, you know, a sense of hope.
No, but it's not the blame.
And the rural-urban divide is sharp. I think there is still, I think the point is well taken. 67% of our poll is rural. Once that poll is rural, if you look at even rural jobs, because of Manrega, many of them are getting jobs which are not getting.
And there was never the kind of lockdown in rural India as there was in urban India.
And in general, there's a sense you've had a bumper crop again this year. So there are some signs that perhaps the citizen in rural India isn't feeling the weight of what's going wrong with the economy as much as
Plus, it's about handling of the economy. So it's got linked to a global pandemic, and therefore it's not about the government's actions or inactions alone. It's a global problem. That's the way, that's the perception.
I take your point. Last question here to Supriya Srinath. Would you, looking at these numbers, change in any way the strategy of the opposition, whether it's with China or the economy, or will these continue to be issues along with COVID that you will bang on?
I would expect the BJP to turn around and say that people in rural India are perhaps insulated because of MNREGA and the Food Security Act, both of the reforms that they vehemently criticize while in the opposition. So that, and also I would say, wait for some more time. The RBI in its bi-monthly policy has very recently said Q2 inflation is going to rise, and that will hurt the common man. I hope it can be contained, but I doubt if it will.
Okay, we're slipping into a break. Challenges for the opposition. If they attack the government on China, that's not working. Attacking on the economy doesn't seem to be working. We'll deal with that. And when we come back from a quick break, we'll focus on the overall performance of the Prime Minister and his government. Because remember, there haven't been so many concurrent challenges as this government has failed this year. It really is one of the toughest years for any government globally. How do people perceive the government is doing? And that one question that Rajdeep likes most, what would happen if elections are held today, Rajdeep?
Fortunately, they're still 4 years away, or almost 4 years away, but we'll still come back in a moment with plenty more.